Welcome to the Boston Office 365 user group. We're here at WeWork Boston. So a little bit of an unusual location for us. Never been to this venue. But we're getting it sorted out. So for those of you that are new to our group, either here or online, welcome. We get together on the third Thursday of every month for this group and typically run 6 to 8. My name is Mike Dixon. I'm one of the founders, along with Dimitri, who's at... All right, so Office 365 has earned its high trust, which is apparently also known as High Trust CSF, which is Common Security Framework, and that also includes the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST. I put a couple of extra links in this slide. There's the servicetrust.microsoft.com and also this other link here, which I am not going to read out because it's crazy, but that gives you a full list of all of the different certifications that Microsoft is compliant with and precisely how they are compliant with those standards. For any of you that have to abide by any of those, there's some great white papers. What I've done for a lot of my clients is you can just go there, select the standard, and they have a white paper for each and every standard. You can just download it and hand it off to the compliance officer at your organization. So let them deal with it. All right, and we want to give a big thanks to Turn Digital for getting the super awesome pizza today. Thank you to Turn. Those of you online, you should come join us in person sometime and have some pizza, because it's good.
Much better than virtual.
Much better than virtual pizza, that's correct. And with that said, I'm going to hand you over to Mr. Jim Lennox, who will explain to us understanding and developing of Azure Functions and LogicApps. That's a mouthful, Jim. You going to be able to get us through that?
I'm not going to get through all of it, but
all right.
We'll soldier on.
All right. See what you can do.
I'm going to... Well, I could have done part of this standing up and part of this sitting. We'll see what we get to. Give me 1 second here. I'll wire it up here. One other thing. Wish it was a beer, but hey. Okay, we're probably not going to get to LogicApps. Everything is conspiring against us a little bit. My name is Jim Lennox, and I guess I have to hit present here somewhere, right? Or
That's great. Sorry, it's got a certain thing on it.
I can't hear you. What?
He was presenting already on it.
Yeah, but
Yeah, you're all set. Just open up your deck. Make it bigger.
well, that is my deck, and it is open. So
No, that's our deck. No, that's our deck. That's our deck. You just want to minimize that screen.
oh, that's your deck.
On the bottom.
All right.
Yours is in actual PowerPoint.
Yeah, so let's get to there. Yeah, that looks like mine. So then we got to go to slideshow, right? From the beginning. Okay, now we're starting to rock and roll here. So this was, you already saw this, so you know where we are, and not much to be seen here. We do have a sponsor, it's Turn Digital. I tried a slice of pizza, it's pretty good. So next time you guys should hustle in here, you know. And this is what we're going to talk about. So, all right. So this is me. This is the highlight, but a few places here and there that I did some good stuff, but you're not here to see a deck about me, so we're moving on here. When you get the deck, you'll have this stuff, so you can contact me if you do have questions. So now we're getting to the heart of it. So why Azure Functions? Why should anybody that is selling themselves a SharePoint guys care about it? Well, it if you've done any migrations lately, you may have encountered people with farm scoped features, or with timer jobs, or things that are just not playing by the rules we have to play by when we move up to the cloud. So so that's kind of why you need to know something about it. So the first part of this is I'm gonna go from the end forward, since I thought we'd be already rocking by now. But okay, so we started out with functional program. I see a couple people in here that I know understand when I say bottom-up design or top-down structured design and functional programming, and you guys grok that. The world moved on to classes, and they work great until you hit a certain level of size, and then all of a sudden it's not so great anymore. So we went to a world of interfaces and then facades, where you put the object-oriented stuff behind it, and it is no longer the customer-facing thing. And what the hell's that about? You define everything, and you start to think of your world in terms of the interfaces rather than the data. And then we moved to REST and stateless. And stateless is sort of a nice way to say it's functions that are idempotent. If you do the same thing over and over again, you get the same answers over and over again. And nothing about executing it this time has anything to do with what we'll do next time. That's partially true, because as you'll see, we communicate between functions by using some Azure storage. And so if you've done something that puts something in Azure storage, the other side that you're talking to may very well do something different. But if you assume a clean queue or whatever, then it's reasonably true. And so now we have serverless functions. And I saw this back before anyone even thought about it at a Tech Ready, and they gave a class afterwards, and they were discussing it from the machine side. How do you scale up the machines, and how do you scale them back down? And really not talking much about how we would do development in this world. Okay, so where are we now? I kind of intended to show a bunch of graphics. I'm going to try this just to see what happens. And well, God knows what will happen when we get out of here. But so my view of the world right now is that you've got all of these core technologies, and they kind of live in the center. And little by little, we got Azure AD Connect after we got Azure, and that allows us to treat, from a security standpoint, everything the same, between the cloud and enterprise or on-premise. And then we got O365. We've got the security models, and we have third-party apps, and because we have OAuth and OpenID Connect and REST, we can communicate with them. But something interesting happened. I don't know, what was it? Maybe yesterday, it seems like. But we started hearing about things called LogicApps and Azure Functions and Power Apps. And now we've got machine learning, and it's hard to get an episode of MSDN magazine without seeing that, right? And so all these things sitting in here are beginning to look like data stores rather than the primary point of entry that you go to. And we're now seeing that this connectivity in this REST-based sort of model is connecting things we never thought of. Okay, so that's how I see the world. Okay, you might see it differently, and that'd be okay. That's you again, I think. God. Do we need that? Okay, we're still there. Okay, so the whole idea of an Azure function is that the functions, you do one thing, and it's not like sub world peace. It's a small thing, and you take your results and you put them in a queue. Something else looks at it and does something, and so we have this idea of microservices or micro chains. We have communication queues. Now, if you wanted to understand all that well enough to develop it, then you put a lot of time in. You put a lot of nights, weekends, and stubbing your toes, and just like it seems like clockwork, they came out with durable functions, which hides the queue from you. And so somebody else can come along and with very little effort do what you spent all that time learning to do. But that's just the way it is in this world. So moving forward. So Azure Functions can be in an ecosystem that's either consumption-based or service-based. So on the consumption plan, you pay for time, execution, and memory resources. And you pay as you go, and you get something like 400,000 gigabyte seconds for free. So as a developer, you can do a lot of stuff, and you'll never really see your 150 a month or whatever move much. But you may have VMs that might be doing infrastructure as a service. And if you're doing that, then you might have a lot of idle time on these VMs. So you may very well want to host them yourself, and that's an app service plan. If you want Linux or you want boutique images or something like that, then that's going to make a lot of sense for you. Now on the consumption plan, we have a scalar controller that's going to look at the resource usage, and that's the guy that's going to give you more resources or take resources away based on time, execution, and memory. Okay. Any of the numbers you see here, if they were true today, they probably will be not true next week. So they're just representative at this point. Now, the way that these functions are the way they calculate the cost is by the entire function app. So it doesn't matter if some are using a lot and some are not. They look at the whole function app. Okay, and we'll see something about that. So again, it's app serves dedicated plans. You're decoupled from this cost, time, and execution because you already own the VM. You're paying a fixed sort of commitment for that. Okay. So the things to consider, most of us are going to want a consumption plan. But, again, if you already have VMs, why not? If you're going to exceed the resource usage that you're allowed in the consumption plan, well, you might want to do that too. And lastly, if you need a VNet or a VPN in, you're going to need your own VM, and you need larger sizes or, the Linux or custom image kind of stuff. So a picture used to be worth 1,000 words. It's 500 nowadays because of inflation. But the whole idea here is you've got why is it doing that? Come on, come back. Okay. You hit the mouse. Anyway, so you have webhooks, event hubs, service buses, timers. You got all the things that Azure gives us. It's a very rich environment. And if you're on the consumption plan, then you have this scale controller that provide, and it's going to look at the kind of resources you're using and govern it. It's going to move you up, move you down. So that's what we're trying to show by this picture. Now, this is the quintessential diagram. You have tasks. Now, when we say task 1 there and task 2, those could be thousands of instances of those, all listening on many different queues or listening on the same queue. And so we can structure our data, it's usually a JSON array, and we can look at it and say, okay, this is for me, this isn't. So you can build your own kind of a this event-driven model there to sort of look at what you should look at. But that's the whole essence of what we create some functions, we create a queue, and we share information between the queues. Sometimes the same information, and sometimes you might modify that information. Okay. But now we have durable functions, so the model looks a little different. It's the same model. Everything about it is the same, except you don't have to create the storage necessary to do it. The durable functions create it themselves. Okay? What's next? Okay, So now we're going to start talking about, well, how do we do this? You know, if we want to do development, what do we need? Well, I always recommend Node Version Manager, and the reason I recommend it is because it will allow you to manage multiple instances of Node. And anybody that's done any SPFX web parts has, you know, realized the pain of the new version of SPFX came out, but the new version of Node doesn't support it, and everything that you're doing, you have to do a lot of work to move it forward. Now we have two versions of the Azure CLI now. We have the 1.x and then we have the 2.0. And I'll show you a picture that will paint the whole story for you. So the other thing we need is Node.js, and we have some constraints on that. I'm going to tell you about those when I put the nice picture up. We have to have VS Code. The other things that we almost certainly need are the Azure Storage Explorer and Postman. You can do things with Fiddler, but I've found Postman to be much more size, so you might want that. Now, these all have one thing in common. That's that they're free. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different things for free that are pretty decent tools to have. So that I think is pretty cool. Now, I'm going to bring these up. So in the slide deck are a bunch of mind maps, and they're published out to the cloud. So you don't have to write down anything that you see. And when we try to write code or do the code, it's going to be at this late stage we're going to cut and paste. But you don't have to worry about copying it down or missing it, because all the commands that I'm giving you are out there. There's like 5 or 6 of these mind maps out there for you to look at. So the first one I want to show you, okay. Oh God, do you ever have anything you don't have to sign into? Of course. All right, so let's view. Okay, so this is a mind map that gives us the choices. So because you have a 1.x Azure CLI, you have the 2.0 out now. So the 1.x, I said the 1.x, no, it's displaying it wrong, is, well, this is displaying nodes. So if you are planning on doing SharePoint, then the most mature version of Node that you're going to be able to use is 8.12. Okay, if you can't use anything above that. So that will automatically, you will want to get, if you get Node Version Manager 1.17 is the latest, and you can use that. Now, if you don't care about SharePoint, you can still use Node Version Manager, but you can latest version, they call it LTS or long-term supported. Now, the difference between 2.0 and 1.x is that 1.x uses Windows and only Windows, and it uses .NET 4.7 framework. So if you need to do something other than Windows, that's not your path. Okay. If you need to do that, then you're going to go the other way, because 2.0 is built with .NET Core. So the whole model that you use to create everything is different. Now, what if you need to do both? Then you're going to find that Node Version Manager was a lifesaver for you, because you can switch between the two and use .NET Core for 2.0, and you can use 1.x for anything going down the Windows or SharePoint line, okay? Now, the next thing is to see that, okay, so we're going to get VS Code, and we're going to have to do a few things. We're going to have to install the Azure CLI. All this is done. We're not going to show that, but I will walk you through a little bit about what you need to do. So you're going to want the Azure CLI. If you plan on doing C# in your Azure functions, you're going to want to install OmniSharp as one of the extensions in VS Code. you might want the debugger for Chrome, you might want PowerShell. You're going to probably want Shell Launcher. It's an extension that allows you to configure a command window, a PowerShell, Bash, and be able to bring them up at will and bring multiple instances up. And one of the mind maps has what you need to do that. Now, you may, if you want to talk to Dave Lazzi because you're trying to do Power App and he's the guy, you know, then you might want to load VS Live Share up. It now has audio and it now has a Slack channel, and it's a pretty decent thing as well. So let's see now, what can I do here? Let's get out of that. So every one of these mind maps are sitting up there. So we're gonna switch over now, see if we can't start doing some code. Sometimes they hide, so I'm gonna show you that you can check your runtime and a few other things, and I'll tell you why that's important as we move on. So let's move out of. We can move out of this for a minute. Well, I don't want to stop presenting, guys. What do I need to do to? I'll just go through this. We'll finish the slides, then I'll go back and do it. Okay. So you will want to care when you decide that you want 1x or 2x, because Azure is cutting edge. They're at 2.0. And if you want to do SharePoint and you don't think about it, after you create a function app and you start creating functions, it's too late to change it. So you want to understand before you create any functions what your function app is looking like, not just because it's not going to matter on premise, it's going to matter when you go up to Azure. And so if you create the function app, no matter how you create it, you can plug it in here and then go to Azure and get your master key. That will tell you what version of the runtime you're running. And later on, I'm going to show you what you can do to fix it if you don't want the one that is living. So let's go back to the menu again. Let's not do that. Let's go back to here. Oh, come on, what is going on here? Well, okay, unfortunately, okay. So one of the first things that we're going to do is to create a resource group. So the way that's going to look, that's why I'm going through these and showing you first so that we can just speed along. So the way that we create a resource group is, well, log into Azure. And if you do, and so that's why you got to install all that the Azure CLI first. And you can list the accounts you have, and you can look and see which one is the default. And if you got multiples and you want to use a particular one, then you're going to get the subscription ID and put that in for the £pound ID. And that's going to set your Azure environment to that instance. Now, another thing you want to do is maybe you're going to want to look and you're going to want to show all of your groups so that you don't try to pick the same name all over again or something. And you're going to want to know which locations that you can use. And, you know, I typically use the East, you might use Central, but that command's going to list that for you. And now you're down to where you want to create the group. You give it a name for your resource group. You give it a location. And that'll create your resource group. Okay? So then you're probably next going to want a storage account. So let's move up a little bit. And so the next thing that you're going to do is create your storage account. Now, again, using AZ, you see the pattern here. You can say, I want to look at storage and account. I want to list and list it as a table so you see what storage accounts you have. Because after a while, you're going to get a lot of them. Maybe you want to reuse one, or maybe you want to create one. Okay? Now, there are 5 different SKUs that you can pick. If you're just doing development, the first one is probably what you want. The other ones cost more, so if you got a lot of money, then you pick one of them. If not, then you're probably going to want to pick the standard. Now, when you create the storage account, you're going to tell it you want to create now instead of list. You're going to give it the name for the storage account, and you got to keep the right rules. So if you just leave everything lowercase, you'll probably be safe. And then you want to give it the location, and then you want your resource group, and then you want to give it the SKU. So we do that. So now we have a resource group, we have a storage account. Okay. So the next thing that we're probably going to want to do is to actually create a function app. So let's see what that looks like. And we're going to do these commands. So we're going to cut and paste rather than type from a cheat sheet probably. Now these storage map or these mind maps are they don't come in all the way all the time. So sometimes they hide on you. So don't think because you don't see it that it's not out there. Okay. So the way we create a function map is we can do that with the Azure, or we can do it inside of Visual Studio Code, or we can do it instead of AZ, we can use func and create the function app. Now, what this will do for us is, again, we're going to say using AZ, we can create the function app and give it a name, give it a storage account, and anyone you want, that has the resources in it that you care about. Okay. You give it your resource group and your consumption plan, and this is going to give you an empty function app. Okay. Now, config. The last command here will do a listing of the properties that function app has. So that's yet another way, instead of that checking command that I gave you that uses the master key, you can see it in here by using that last command. And it's now that you want to look and say, does it have the right version of Node? Does it have the right version of the runtime? And if it doesn't, then we fix it. Okay. So moving on, create storage account, initialize VS Code. So let's say that we needed to do some changes. Well, again, we can list the resources that we have for our function app, and then we can make changes to them. There's two of them that I've already done these changes, so maybe we don't have to do them for me, but the website node default version is typically 5 or 6, 5.60 or something, 6.5, and that's just too far back for anything useful for us. And so we will run Azure Function App Config and tell it to set for this function app in this resource group this setting to this value. So we'll probably set it up to 8.12 because that's what you're going to want if you're going to do any Azure Functions or SPFX web parts. And then the next thing that we're going to want to do is make our decision. Do we want to do SharePoint? If so, we want the ~1. And if we're going to do something else that's or not related to SharePoint, it's going to default to 2.0 up there in Azure. You won't even have to do this. But if you do want to do SharePoint, you probably have to do this. So now we have a function app that's set up with a resource group, with the storage account, with the right parameters that we need. Okay. So now we can begin to talk about what do we do now, right? What do we do now? Well, one of the things we can do is start creating functions. Okay, where are you? Come on, where are you? Okay, I don't know why it does this. That's fine. Okay, so we can create our function app through Azure. That's the same function app. I don't want that guy. What I want is publish function app. Launch your technology, install mmap, install VS Code. I thought it was that. Let's take a look here. So at this point in time, we're pretty much where we want to be. Now, if we're going to use VS Code, then we have to tell VS Code that we're kind of trying to do an Azure function. So we in the directory, we cd into the directory, and then we do code dot to get to Visual Studio Code. Now, you can pre-create your directory and go in there, then just do func init without the directory name. Either way works, okay? And then a code dot. So this is kind of the jumping off point where let's take a look at something. Let's see, guys, what is that? So I don't want to kill this, but I might kill the presentation. So what do we, escape maybe? Yeah, okay. All right, so I'm going to bring up a couple of the tools that we're going to need. So I'm going to bring up Azure Explorer. If it'll let me. And then I'm going to bring up. What's that?
We just lost your T connection.
What are you going to do, man? So what do we need to do? Go to Skype.
This green icon?
Green icon, yeah.
Desktop.
Those will probably happen a few times, guys. I don't. All right, so let's get that down. All right, so we have Storage Explorer up, and we'll take a look at that. And we'll probably want Postman, so let's look at that. Bring that guy up. There we go. At least we don't have to log into that guy, so. Do we really need to see this every time? God, will you just go away, please? All right, so let's, I'm going to go and show you something that was sort of the final thing I was going to show, but I'll show that first because it's already done. Then we'll go as far as we can, creating a hello world one. So let's just go out here and, okay, cd dot dot, cd dot dot, cd dev, backslash Azure, Azure funds. Okay, so I'm going to cd into JS licenses. Now, there's something else I want to tell you. Besides the Azure runtime switch that you might have to make, that could take you a long time to figure that out. If you pick CSX, which is the C# runtime, you'll be able to create your functions just fine. But the Omni C# guy doesn't understand how to debug them. So you won't be able to debug them in Visual Studio Code. I believe that if you move to Visual Studio itself, that you can then debug those guys. Then if you're doing 2.0, because you don't care about SharePoint, then you can just do regular C# functions rather than the runtime. That will save you a lot of time to understand and remember that. So here we are, and what I am going to do is a code space dot, and that should give us VS Code. Come on. You never know what's going to happen on a demo, I'll tell you. All right, a minute to settle in, and let's just get rid of everything. Now I'm just going to go through all these files for you, because has anybody ever seen this? All right, let the record show that no one raised their hand. All right, so if you take a look at this, we have two functions. One that is just going to take in a record, and it's going to putting it in a queue. Then we got another one listening on that queue that's going to grab it and simply put it in a blob store. This is to show you that connectivity between storage depth. Okay? So you have a few files that you get because you did the func init. You get a local settings file. It won't look like this. I'm going to tell. So the one that you'll get will be empty. Pretty much it'll say is encrypted false, and it may say something else, but there's nothing in it. You will also find that your host.json is empty, just like this. Okay. You will have a get ignore unless when you create the function you tell it that you don't want to have get. Now this is local get, and it's going to put it wherever your default repository is located. And it has a bunch of ignores in here for the kind of things that shouldn't go in there. Now you can configure the Azure get so that you can have your gets sort of coupled, and then you can use your deployment by using get. But that's the advanced class, okay? Now in the VS Code we get a few things as well. There will be a task file that can run bug stuff that we want to do. There will be a settings file with your user settings, and I've really never touched it from here, so I won't even bother with it. There will be a launch.json, and notice that what it wants to run is this task that I just showed you, which is this guy. So that will start it up, and then launch is setting up the debugger on 5858. Okay, so that's how we're going to get our debugging. The extensions, if you need more than this default extension that you get, you're going to, it's an NPM, or it's go to the Azure Extensions, put that in, and it's if you've been in Visual Studio, it's NuGet. If you're in this world, it's NPM. And you have, when you're in VS Code, you have the ability to go out here to this guy, which will show you everything recommended. It's worse than the TV, right? Now we went and found this extension, and we told it to install that guy. That's your Azure function. The Azure CLI is an NPM install that you install with an app v1 or without it to get either v1 or v2. It's just an NPM. And now once you install Azure function, you'll get the Azure account guy, and that's what will let you log in when you need to. Okay. The Omni Sharp is the thing you need to do C#. And like I said, it just doesn't have the ability to do the debugging, and you'll spend a long time trying to figure it out. And if you see something you can't do it, it's from a year ago, and say, well, it must have changed by then, right? And between that and making the function app and not putting the right extension in, that's probably a week of your time, okay? So don't do those things. Always remember not to forget those. I got the Chrome debugger. I put PowerShell in there so I could do like an ISE. And what else? I have VS Live Share now. There's VS Live Share Audio, and that allows you, me and somebody else can be in two different continents, two different Visual Studio environments, VS Code, regular VS. And I decide I want Dave Wazzy or Mike Dixon to work with me through VS Live. Send them an email. They get it, they click, their environment comes up. We both see the code. We both can debug the code. We both can change the code, and everybody sees. It's probably, it's probably cool stuff, you know. So one other thing is this shell launcher, okay? And the default thing is to use the Control-Shift-T, because that's usually vacant. So you can hit Control-Shift-T and it'll come up, and if there's nothing there, it gives you a window that says, what do you want to do? And then you put in the command prompt, and that is going to bring up, or want to bring up, the shell launcher guy. And so I have the mind map out there to show you how to do that. And so the end result here, let's clean this up. The end result is that when you're sitting in here, you can say Control-Shift-T, and you can get a command window, a PowerShell window, a get, or multiple instances of those. And so I could come here and say, you know, I really want a PowerShell window as well. And you'll see that I have 2 of them. So it's a pretty good thing to do. Everything is there for you. You just got to just do it. Okay, and it's in the one. Well, it's too much trouble to go back to the mind maps. Time permitting, I'll just show you that. Okay. So what do we do now? Let's get out of here, because so those are all things set up in Visual Studio. So now you're pretty much set up. So we can go back to our files and say, okay, what did we get when we got these 2 directories? We got those because we sat in here. I'm not going to execute the command, but I'll just show you. We sat here and said func new -L. We're doing JavaScript. -N. We give it some name, and then -T, and we give it a template. And I'm going to show you how you can see what all the templates are. Now, if you didn't give it any of that, if you just said func new, it will be like SPFX. It's going to ask you for everything. So if you can't remember the command, it's not the end of the world, but those are in the mind maps I'm giving you, okay? So let's go backwards again. So what we're going to want to do then is take a look at what is actually inside here, because this is kind of interesting. You're going to see 3 files, a sample.dat that if you want to run the stuff on the command line, the JSON file, you can do that, you know, for hello world, hello name actually. So that file's not really all that interesting at all, right? So here is the function.json for the first function. This is the stuff you want to really pay attention to. Function is not disabled. If you made that true, when you publish it to Azure, it wouldn't say running. It would just say it's disabled. Okay. Now you got the bindings. The first binding is this one. Okay. So what this is saying, there are 3 different levels that you can have for an Azure function with regard to security. Anonymous, which means you just need the URL and you run. You can have function, which says you need the URL and then you need the function's code, just like you do if you're doing SPFX or any kind of app registration where you get an app ID and you need that guy on the URL. You get the same thing. Now the type is an HTTP trigger. The direction is in and the name of it is REQ. Okay. Now I've specified a route, so that'll be in the URL. Okay. It'll be whack API, whack new purchase. Okay. Now the second binding that you get is the HTTP binding. That just gives you the ability to write out to an HTTP page or whatever. You know, this you always get, so it's going to be there. You don't even worry about it. But now we're going to take from the trigger a JSON, and we are going to write that to a queue. So we have a third binding. So this third binding is a queue. Then goes out the queue item. Its queue name is orders, and it is going to use Azure Web Job Storage, which is a well-known property. And if you go back to this local settings, you'll see that that guy is there on line 10. And what that is actually pointing to is I did a trick where once I published my function app up there. I went to the function app and said, how about downloading this for me and take all of the properties? And so when it came down, I had a local settings file that had everything that I need to actually hit the real storage up there instead of the fake storage that this Azure CLI is giving you. So we can run the function locally, but we're hitting storage that exists up there, okay? Let's get out of there. And so that's what this function.json is giving us. Now, the order that they exist in here is the order they'll exist in the function that goes with that function.json. And you don't have to put them all in there because they actually end up in the context. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So we have index.js for this guy. We have a context, we have the input queue, and we're specifying the output queue because we're going to write to that guy. Okay. Now, all we're doing here is we expect to get a JSON fragment that I'll show you. We're simply saying, if you find it in the query string or you find it in the body, great, put it in a variable. And if you did find anything, then we're going to send a 200 response back, and we're going to put this out to the HTTP. If something went wrong, we're going to set a status of 400 and say, hey, I didn't get anything from you. Why don't you give me something? And then at the end of the day, we're going to take the bindings for that output queue item, and we're going to write that same JSON fragment out to, and something else is going to be listening for that, okay? Remember I said serverless functions are connected by a queue of some kind, one or more, and that's how they communicate. Now, context.done is saying, hey, I'm through with all of the execution. That can become very important if you are doing asynchronous, because you've got to decide, what you're going to send back for a promise and all that. In our case, it's just saying, hey, we're pretty much done here. Okay. Now we have another function that I want to show you, and that's in another subdirectory. As soon as you create a function, it creates the name you give it, creates a subdirectory for you. Again, we have function.json. Here's that queue again, okay? Because we wrote to that queue as an output queue, but this guy is looking to get that queue as an input queue, okay? And he's going to write to a blob store. So it's an output blob is the name, it's a type blob. You give a blob store a name, and you can actually give it an extension for the blobs you write. So all this is a blob, okay? So this is just making GUIDs and sticking them in the licenses queue, if you will. And it's an output, and it's not disabled. So it doesn't matter where you put these things, but inside of bindings, they have to come in the order that you described them. So now, having looked at this, let's take a look at the function. Well, let's take a look at the function. Not much happening here. Again, we get it in. Just to show you that you can do something to it, I used the crypto library and I created a secret. Now we could take that secret and we could secure our blob by encrypting it if we wanted to, and somebody picking it up out of the queue would have to know that secret in order to unencrypt it and use it, right? But just to show you, there's something you could do. Okay, so that's everything inside of here that you want to care about. So let's go back. Get out of my way. So I'm going to go back to our first function, and I'm going to say, okay, I already have a breakpoint in there. It's a typical thing. You put the breakpoint in, you take it out, okay? So now what we're going to do, we don't care about any of that. That's trying to give us help with the DAT file. We could care less. Let's crank this guy up. Let's actually run him, okay? So we'll say funct host start. Now that's going to crank this guy up. And when it does, it's going to tell us a lot of stuff, okay? So I'm going to make that real big so you can see it. So that's node cranking up, okay? And if you look, this vendor has blocked. Why? Allow access. Yes. Okay. So you see that it's saying, hey, I'm running this first function for you, and it's sitting out here on localhost 7071, API / and there's that route that I gave it. So this works like MVC apps do, okay? If you've done an MVC app, you say, oh yeah, I get that, right? Now, in the host file, I could tell it to take the /API away, and then you get the real pretty URL you want. Now, the other thing to notice here is that it's running the debugger. It's saying that's where I'm listening, okay? But in order to actually get it to stop on the debugger, we have to attach to the node process. Okay, so how do we go about doing that? Well, this guy here is the debugger. So we're going to do that. And up here, if you look, that's that task we made, a node task, okay? So all we're going to do is click on it. And it's going to, you see a little blue line going across there. Sometimes it goes real quick, sometimes it goes real slow. And once it stops, then the debugger is attached, okay? Every now and then it doesn't stop, so this would probably be the time if it's going to happen, okay? So we're just going to have to wait. There, it looks like it's attaching, and it'll write a lot of stuff here, blah, 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 blah. This you get because you were already attached to Node, okay? And then it turns orange down here, and it's kind of saying we're attached. It's kind of saying here's your account to Azure. So you're good. So let's go out to Postman now. And we'll run it from out there. So come on, Postman, come and see. What the heck? I don't care about you. Go away. All right. So we set this up. I maybe didn't say it, but we set this up so it could do a post. Now, you can... Because we're doing a post, we're gonna, let me find my, I'm gonna find a post I already did, just to make life simple. New person, okay. Now, here is the URL. I'm gonna change that to a post, I said. Yeah, let's change it to a post. That's not what I want. Hold on a second. Come on, where are you? Where's that guy? Okay, so we're going to post, and we're going to, come on, wow. I'm having a little trouble. There it is. Okay, so if we were doing this locally, we're not up in Azure, so the security that we gave it as function doesn't matter. It'll just work. But by bringing localhost back down, we are talking to the real queues. They live in Azure. So Azure is going to enforce whatever we gave it. We have to give it the function code here. And then we're going to go to the body here, and I'm going to get, a JSON fragment here. So I'm going to say, just to make it different so we'll understand it, we'll put rocks tonight. And who knows how long it'll take. All right, let's just make this something easy to see. Okay, and we want to make sure that we're using JSON application for this, okay? Now, if everything goes well, when we hit the send, something will happen. Something good, right? So when I hit this, you see that blinking down there? Well, that's because we ended up in the debugger. Now, I don't recall what I set it for, but you can see there's a context. It's got binding data. It's got all your bindings in it. There's rec. There's res. The input is in there. Everything is in there, okay? Now, I forget I set it for, so it might time out. So I'm going to let it go on its way. And now if we go back over and look at Postman, well, he's telling us he received the order, so that was good. So now if we go over here to our stored, God, I hate that. I wish they would change the icon when they're running. Okay, so what's that? Not again, please. Oh, come on. Let's see if I can do it all by myself here.
There you go. Good job.
All by myself, okay? Now, I happen to know that its license function is looking for, so let's go there. And I know that our queue is orders. And I also know that this happens so fast that even if you have it open, you'll never see it, the order go in there. Now, just for a sanity check, we can look in here and see, did anything go wrong? Because it'll try 5 times and put it in the poison queue. Well, this looks pretty good, right? So now we're going to go here to our blob container. And remember, I told you the name would be licenses. And, you know, there'll be a bunch of things in there. You would think the last one will be on top. That's the 13th. So I don't think that's our guy, okay? So we're going to wait. You know, we can sit here and be impatient, you know, keep saying this. So the thing is, it can take up to 10 minutes for Blob Store to do its thing, to get it. So when you do your Azure functions, you better think about that, because it might work really well in your dev environment, and then you get out there and you're thinking, you know, what you're doing is taking, you know, in your dev environment, instantaneous, right? And now it's sitting out in Azure and it's taking, you know, up to 10 minutes. Yeah.
So is that the timing for blob storage, or is it just cold start of the Azure function?
That's just the amount of time it can take for the Azure runtime to stick the message in the queue and have your function react. Now that can be.
It's not the first time. Warm start, do it a million times, you're going to wait 10 minutes each time?
It could be the first time, and if things sit idle for a while, it will sort of put you in a quiescent state. So there's friction in waking you up again, and there's just friction in the fact that it's a blob store. So when you're doing your architecture, keep that in mind, or you may end up, you know, with everything working in your dev environment, and then you get to show the kind of big office there, and the world is not a happy place. So we're still waiting to see what's it going to do. I want to manage it. I want to go back, close. So let me go back to licenses, refresh. God, I clicked on the wrong thing. It looks like licenses. Oh, come on, where are you? Well, I clicked something wrong here, guys. Well, let's refresh all and see if it'll come back. Licenses, containers. I have no idea that's doing that. Why? That's better. All right, but I still don't see what we're looking for yet, and that's why I said it can take a little while for that guy to show up. And again, you can hit refresh, and somebody will come in and they say, well, clicking refresh helps, right? But it doesn't really help you. So while we're thinking about that, any other questions? No? Okay.
So you have a function app, and you have several functions that are dependent upon each other.
They are, but they're loosely dependent upon each other because I've connected them via a queue.
Okay.
Now, let's say that you want to put a function app out there and you want it to be more old school, so it's basically a bunch of REST endpoints. You could do that. They don't have to be connected to each other, and you could put 5 functions in your function app, and they're just different URLs. Okay, and so we each have the same URL and a different name for the function. And so then they can take different parameters, and so it'd be equivalent to a web app with some REST-based interface.
Okay.
What else?
Well, my thing was, so if you have the 10-minute lag that can happen intermittently.
That's if you're talking to a blob.
Oh, okay.
Okay. The just happen almost pretty quick,
Right.
as fast as anything will via the web. Okay.
Right. Okay.
We're still waiting. My
Same for
goodness.
queues, blobs versus queues.
Queues happen pretty quickly as well. It's just blob stores that are real, you just can't know. Okay. Now we can come back and look at this because, I'll show you one that has already happened. It's a .lic with a random GUID. That's what that license, I'll show you again in the function there, but it's much slower than it is at home. So I can fail to open. Well, okay, why not? Try it again. Things timed out. That's the other thing, is that in your host file, you may be setting your timeout to 30 seconds, let's say. Well, if you get in a debugger and you wait too long, it's going to kill your function on you. All right, so this is just that same JSON fragment. It just happens to go in the blob store, okay? And if ours came in, then we would see that it's not Tim Roberts and it's not that product ID and so forth, and that we did indeed tack on a secret with this. Yeah. Okay. Now, it looks like it's just being stubborn. It's going to take a while. So, and again, I don't know what to do. We have no control over that. So how about we let it sit, and we'll should be on its way. So hopefully it'll go there. And let's see if we got a little bit of time. So maybe we'll come back and try to do like a Hello World or something if you guys want to do that. Now I do recommend Postman. Don't tell me that happened. No, it's still there. I have always been a fan of Fiddler and everything, but you don't want to use Fiddler on this stuff. It's really a pain because you got to do all the headers yourself. You got to, get everything just right, and then go hunt for it with 1,000 other things coming through. And Postman will save you lots of time. Okay. So I'm going to get out of here. So basically, we just hit anything here. Now that got rid of the debugger, but we're still in Node. Okay. So to get rid of Node, we have to hit a Control-C and say yes there, and that's that. Okay. And so then we can go back to our functions, and so I'll go to the function.json. See, this is what the queue got named, right? Licenses, and then it's going to add a random GUID.lic to it. Okay, so that's why you saw that pattern. It's using Azure Web Storage, which again is based on the local settings, and that is pointing out, if you go all the way over there, since it's still highlighted, that guy is pointing out to Azure, and that big long code is what's allowing us to talk to it. So we're running the function locally, but we're debugging it locally, but the queues are happening in Azure. And I think you want to do that most of the time because it's going to give you another reminder of things not happening instantaneously. Okay? So anything else about this before I go to a tabula rasa here and try to... No? Okay. All right, so then going to close down this guy. Oh, one other thing. So I don't think I have it in the host file here. No, but in your host file, there's at least 500 parameters, and you'll use a few. You might do something to get rid of the /API. You might do some length of time that you're willing to let the function wait. There's a lot of things. You could spend a week trying to know them all, but you'll find them as you need them because you'll Google and someone will tell you. So I'm just going to close this guy up for right now. Close the editor. I am going to close folder and just get out of there, okay? So what I'm going to do to save a little bit of time here, I've got a file out here I'm going to open up. We're just going to kind of cut and paste a little bit to see that we can't get this done. Is there beer tonight by any chance? Or? Mm-hmm. All right, all the more reason, right? So I've got everything that I've talked about. I've got those mind map files, and you've got, they're going to put my slides up, so you're going to have all that. And then you have an issue, just give me a ring. If I can, I will talk to you right away. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to go out here, cd ... and then what we're going to do, I'm going to tune to what I already have in my boss demos. So I'm going to BOS star. All right, I don't have it. So I'm going to make a directory. I'm going to call it boss demo. I'm a CD into boss demo. Can you see that at all? And here's what I'm going to do. I am going to do, because I've already got my environment set up, I like using the Azure functions because, I learned it. It's pretty cool, but we're going to shortcut that a little bit. But I went through those for you so you know how they get used. So we're going to do, so the first thing we're going to do is code. We're not going to do that. Get out of there. I'm going to do code space dot. Okay. That's going to give me the S code, and it's already looking at the directory. Okay. And I'm going to come in here. And I'm going to say, you know that your backtick, at least on Windows boxes, are way over there on the left. It's under the tilde, right? So if you hit Control backtick, you will get a command window. Whichever one you make the default when you do the shell extensions stuff. So here we are, right? And I don't want to see any of this anyway, so get out of there. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a function app. So we're going to say func init. We're already in the directory, so we don't need the directory. If we weren't already in it and we gave it a directory, it will create the directory, and then it will give us the files it's going to give us right now, okay? So here we are. What just happened there? Oh, what's going on? Well, I was hitting the wrong keys. Okay. Okay, now look what happened. We got the local settings. There's nothing in it, right? We got the host JSON, nothing in it. We got the get ignore. It gives you all the things it gives every time you do it. If you want more or less things to not go into your get store, you change the file, okay? And then it also gave us the .vs code. And if you had done it outside of here and then came in, you'd have a little thing at the bottom window saying, we've discovered that you did this and you might not have done it in VS Code. Do you want us to know about it? And you'd hit yes, and it would do the VS Code thing and make everything right again for you. You don't have to do it. It's 3, 4, 5 different ways we could do this, okay? Now, the launch.json is set up to give you that debugging experience, okay? And but you don't have a task yet, and that will show up just shortly. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to do it so we can make the function by just doing this, okay? I'm just going to say func new. people that do SPFX are going to say, oh man, this is cool. I already know about this. All right, so I was going to ask you for a language. Do you want to do C#, Batch, JavaScript, TypeScript, PHP? Anything with experimental means it's not supported in the real world yet. It's still, kicking the tires on it. And you do the same thing you do with SPFX. Now, again, we could have given it all that, okay? But we're going to say, you know what? I want JavaScript. You want JavaScript? Well, what kind? This is that -t parameter, and there's a function in the mind map. You can look, and it will tell you how you can list these out. Then you can do your function new -name -l is JavaScript, and here's the template I want. Now, because it's a demo, and you never want to do anything, I'm going to say, hey, I want to do an HTTP trigger here. Say, great. What do you want? Well, I want HTTP trigger, okay, BOS demo, okay? And I'm going to hit return. Now, if you go look over here, you see we got a subdirectory over here, right? So let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at that. Look what we got. There's that sample.date thing that we almost never care about. We're going to tell the marketplace that we really don't want any help here. Here is the function.json, and let's get this back to our world. Now, you see, it's not disabled, it's function level, it's a trigger, it's in, and it's REQ. You can change REQ, you just have to go change it in the function as well before you run it, okay? Now, once we do JavaScript, we are committed to that from now until the world ends in that function app, unless we want to delete everything and go do the changes in the function app, okay? Now we get our gratuitous HTTP guy as well. He defaults to RES. You can change that guy too if you like. You just got to change him in the function, okay? And we also have an index.js. There's our function. Like I said, it's going to look for a name parameter now in either the query or the body. I don't like to let it default, so I always make it a 200. Now I know what I'm doing, right? And it can do the hello world thing here. I don't care. And on the RES, which is the HTTP output, if it gets 400, it's going to tell it. It's assuming that if it gives you 400, it's because you didn't give it the name. But, in a real function, we'd look at different codes here and we'd do different things, right? So here we are. Now I'm going to do the gratuitous breakpoint here. And if we go back up here again and look at VS Code, we still have the launch.json. And if we go out here and look at our debugger, we still have the attached JSON here. So now what we're going to do, we can go run this with Postman, but we need a node server running. Okay, so that's why we have to do the func host start here, okay? And if we do that, I'm going to do a Control KS here and that's just going to get rid of everything. Now, you see the get already knows about a bunch of changes we could make. So we could click on that if we wanted to do that first, and we could put all our changes out there. So why don't we do that real quick, just so you can see that, what I do. That looks better. That's the way it was, I think. So here I can say, okay, hey, what's my message? Initial commit. I said commit. Now it's going to say, yeah, great. Do you want me to automatically stage them all for you? Yeah, I'm lazy. And I'm just going to go out and do it. So now you don't see anything over here in get. Okay, so now we're back here, and we'll go back to, now, because of that Azure function thing, I'll show you that in a minute. That will distract you right now. So now we're going to run function host, and notice that it's running our function, and notice that it's telling us what our URL is, right? So we're going to grab this guy. I'm going to go out to Postman, and we are going to have because we're supporting only get there, we're going to have to come down here and say, do a get. And here, come on, and here's our function. And hey, we need a parameter, so let's start with success anyway. Boston 0365 group. Okay. And so now we're going to do a send, and we'll see what happens here, okay? Well, it said hello, Boston, so that worked. But it didn't go in a breakpoint yet, right? Why not? Well, we didn't attach the debugger, did we? So let's go back to our function, and let's go to our debugger guy here, and let's attach. And then that blue line, can you actually see that thing going up, out? It's going to do that till it attaches. So I've gotten impatient and messed myself up, and you know, have to, you know, put off your way, be patient, right? Okay, it's coming. It's the debugger's cranking up there in just a minute. It will be happy. Now it's hitting 8 o'clock. So what time do we want to quit, guys? All right. Soon.
We started a little bit late, maybe around 15 minutes.
All right. Well, we'll try to make it down. It's still have over that, right? It's still downloading. I mean, at home, I have about as fast as I get, and it does pretty good, you know. Here, you know, it's a demo, so it's going to go even slower. It just said finished, so that's a good sign, right? Okay, and it goes orange like that, at least on mine, depending on your color scheme, something else. Now, if I brought down the local JSON, then I'm going to be into Azure, even though I'm running locally. Therefore, you would have to be logged into Azure. This is not going up to Azure. This is local. And remember when I said it installed the Azure Functions and the Azure login stuff account? So that's what will let you go ahead and log in, and then your world knows all about it. And then as long as you have the function code and all that, which is what bringing that local JSON down will do, you would then be able to get up to the cloud. Absent that, I think you're going to end up with annoyment rather than enjoyment. So that's another remember never to forget, okay? All right, so here we are now. Now let's go back to Postman. Now, I shied away from Postman in the beginning. I was real mad. I'm going to do Fiddler, you know. And then I tried it once, and I said, well, I'll try it again. You know, and I don't think it even took the third time for me to say, the heck with Fiddler, this is what I'm doing. You know. Okay, so this time, let's go up here and, well, we'll run it one more time. And all of a sudden, we're blinking over here, you see, because we got into the debugger. It's right behind us. And you see the same thing. We have a context. It's got bindings. There are EQ. And if you look closely, you see our URL. And if you look even closer, you see our query and the fact that it's got our value in it, right? You could go over here and do watches. You can look at the call stack. So pretty much, as much of a Cadillac environment as you get with client-side JavaScript, okay? Now, we can F10 through here. We don't necessarily have to do anything else. And we saw that we have name in there. And there it is. So we can hit F10 again, and, you know, we got into that part of the code. So now it's going to leave. No point in hanging around. So we'll just say, now, if you're a person that likes to click, 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 you could go up here to Debugger and you see it. You can do all this, okay? So you don't have to hit it with the keyboard and any of that, okay? But we're going to hit F5 and sashay out of here, you know? So now we're done. And if we come back out here to Postman, yeah, it says it did it. So now just to do, you know, what do they call that when you exercise everything? It's code coverage, white box, I forget those, right? So now we would hopefully expect that the world is going to end, right? So we click this thing again. I hadn't ended it yet because we just get into the debugger. We already saw all of this, but we'll look again since now this is where you get screwed up. If you set the host file to like 30 seconds, you'll just about get where you want to do, and boom, it's gone. Come on. Come on.
What do you usually set the host file for timeout?
I'm sorry?
The timeout value, what do you usually use for?
Well, once I get everything the way I want it, you're hitting a trigger. I could get up there in 30 seconds, right? That's a long time. So I'll set the input queue to 30 seconds. Now, you don't have a lot of control over how long. You do have control. You can set the function app itself, the wait. It used to be 5 minutes, and they gave you a parameter where you could move it up to 10. Now the default is 10 minutes, okay? And so you can wait 10 minutes, and I mean, usually I will see what I'm looking for in less than 10, but on the host file, you're getting, yeah, typically it's your trigger, which, you know, I remember if you got a bunch of things hitting it and they're all waiting, you're not going to have a great experience. So I set it like 30 seconds. It's just, you know, the typical, you know, 0:0:30, you know. So, but you can have some control over the output, but it's usually that you don't want to wait the 10 minutes, okay? You're saying, hey, this guy don't happen in a certain length of time. Remember that we've set this up with a trigger that puts it in a queue. It'll stay in the queue until my hair comes back, you know. It's not that queue will sit there until you delete either the resource group, which will delete everything, or the storage account. Okay, so once it gets in there, which 30 seconds is usually enough time, you can wait. So now you have the luxury of saying, well, I know it will ultimately get into the blaster, but I don't feel like waiting. You know, so then you wait, and maybe you run some other function that runs longer or whatever. You know, but you have to think about it as slices of behavior coupled to queues, and those slices can be one or more, you know, functions that are listening, and one or more queues. And so that's how you have to think about your architecture. It's a little bit different than going out and writing a C# app or something, or an MVC app, right? The whole thing is your slice. So think like that. So anyway, here we are, and we've got bindings here. We can click on them. You see you got rec. You see that, you know, that you don't have you have an invocation ID. You see rec here is a little trouble moving the mouse. And you're doing a get, and you can, okay, yeah, I don't see anything else. So
watch variables, everything all work with?
Yep, watch, it's just like any other Microsoft environment, you know. So if we hit F10 now, we get in. Now if I went in there, I'm going to see that name's not there. And when we click this, you see that it also knows that name is not there. So we're going to get a 400. We're going to get this string, okay? So we'll hit F5 just to, like I said, to sashay out of here. You can hit continue, whatever you want to do. I'll hit continue just to let it go. We come back over to Postman, and we got this thing saying, hey, why don't you give me something? I need some love here, right? So it doesn't matter how many functions you have. That's your process for debugging code itself. And so what you're actually debugging is getting it from point A, a trigger perhaps, to point B, which is a queue, and then from point B to point C, and on and on and on, okay? And you may end up using a queue where you put intermediate results, because when I say 10 minutes, that's not just for that blob storage guy. That's how long your function app can run maximally. And at 10 minutes, it is as cruel as, those orcs are. It just slams you. You're gone. So if you don't think your function, if it's doing something saying, I'm getting pretty close, then you have to have a strategy where you put intermediate results either there or another queue, and then you process that. So if you're doing something really sophisticated, it could be process a little bit, put in the queue, intermediate results. Process a little bit, put it in the queue. Process a little bit, hand on to the next queue. That's the nature of this stuff. And so if you look at some books on event-driven architecture, the notion of routing of events based on an ID or some property is, you can do that, right? Because you look, it's an intermediate result. I'm looking for this ID. I'll work on this guy now, okay? And that can be a communication back and forth, because your trigger is already wired up, and he's going to respond back to the guy that sent the message in 5 seconds or less, because if he doesn't, then again, we have annoyment rather than enjoyment there. So let's go over now and let's look at this guy and see what happened here. Anything happened? Did it make a liar out of me? I don't know. I think this is our guy, 1115, okay? Wait. We'll go ahead and open him up. Go ahead and save. You have to tell Notepad every single time. It's just, it's worse than any of us. Okay. Dave Lozzie rocks, right? That's what we were looking for. So it did get to the blob store. I don't know whether it was 9 minutes and 58 seconds or 8 minutes, but it certainly was longer than 3 or 4, right? Okay. Okay. So I could go through and do this again, but where we use the Azure functions. And the thing that I want you to understand is that you can create your directory and come in here with nothing. And then you can start running those Azure commands right here. I typically use PowerShell. It's a PowerShell thing. So I'll say Control-Shift-T, and I will say, give me PowerShell. And then I will sit in here and run those Azure commands. I'll run it and get the resource group. I'll run it and get my storage account. And once I have those, then I can run it and create the function app. And then I run the part of it that is going to change to the appropriate level of node and the appropriate 1x or 2.0. Okay. And then I do a func new or an Azure func new. Either one will work. You can switch off from the AZ commands to the FUNC. And then I do the init of things. I make my functions. I pick the right stuff, and then you write take the code that's there and modify it and fill it in with your code. So that's the process over and over. So I wish we could have got to showing the AZ commands, but I think we've probably gone long enough. So what else can I tell you? Now, when you get to the 2.0, you may not necessarily use the AZ commands because you're going to be in .NET Core. .NET Core will support Windows, Linux, iOS, everybody, okay? And the .NET Core has the commands that AZ has. And so you can go stay in that world. And you may be doing a Func.net or a .NET Func New, and you'll get a directory, and that will look like a different world because it will be C#, real C#, okay? Because now Omni C# is not doing it. It's the .NET Core, which has all the debugging, okay? So that's it. So there were 3 gotchas to look for. The first one is Node the right level? The second one is your Azure runtime the right level? The third one is, did you fix that? And then the amount of time you can wait on storage queues and things like that. And I think that's it. I think that was all of them. Any questions? Any comments? Anything at all, right? I know there's got to be at least one more, yeah.
Everything takes 10 minutes?
Say?
Everything takes 10 minutes?
It can. That's the...
But if you're trying to design something that you want to have happen in a relatively short period of time, this isn't the architecture then, right?
Well, what you would do is probably have multiple functions with multiple queues. And
One, if you started, it's going to take 10 minutes.
but only for a blob store. The blob store is the only one that's that sensitive. If you just write into queues, you're not going to exceed minutes. It's going to be very hard.
What if you wanted to do it within like 10 seconds or 5 seconds?
Well, then you probably want to put it in VM and do infrastructure as a service, and you would then do all the heavy lifting on your own VM.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, if you go back to the slides, that was one of the things that I said was a discriminant.
Somebody was saying, I don't know if this is true or not, that they chose an AWS architecture for that specific purpose to get Lambda functions to work much faster. I don't know if that's true or not.
I don't know. I've been told that the debugging and the building and development experience is much better in Windows.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know whether Lambda functions are going to be better. Yeah.
Hey, Tim, nice seeing you in a while. So I was looking up after what you said. I kind of sneaked over to Google. We'll talk after. So a couple of things. Queues usually have a time to live. The thing pops off the queue where you can tell them to stay forever. Some of the old doc says that there is no forever, but there is like a -1. There's a third choice, which I've spent the last 2 months up to my eyeballs in, which is Azure Storage Tables, which is like a discount version of Cosmos DB.
Yeah.
Okay.
So queues are what Jim said. Azure Storage Tables are 2 things. And again, I won't keep everybody sitting here. I've literally spent like hundreds of hours on things, all the details.
Okay.
It's basically like a little NoSQL store. And you don't pay,
You get a certain amount for free.
Looks cool, but it's $20 per container per month, and it's a longer store. Azure Storage Tables is like a little NoSQL. You just pay for storage and data going out. So I've literally got what would be a $15 or $30 Azure SQL database running for like 30 cents a month.
Yeah.
And there's some details on hot and cold and geo, whatever. But the third thing is what I read. The queues are what you said. You write to a queue, it goes to the queue.
Yeah. You can't turn the knobs to have it reclaim.
Right. Yeah, that's true. There's another thing.
Yeah.
So you write to tables, according to the thing I read, you can look it up. The tables get written when the function exits.
Yeah.
There's a third thing, which is when you're binding to output, there might be that delay. But if you just write the 3 lines of code that say, what's my storage account? What's my client? Actually write out, it's just literally 3 lines. Storage account, client, and write. I don't know, but I wouldn't be that surprised if it just writes to the blob immediately, because what's it going to do?
Yeah.
Like, how does it know to not write?
Yeah, well,
where is it in purgatory? So I can't bet, but I kind of would. You just write those 3 lines, it's just going into the blob right away. And they're bigger. There's a limit of like 64K on Azure Storage Table entities. They just can't be that big. Blobs can be terabytes. So what people tend to do is they point to one or the other.
Yeah.
it would throw a thing in Azure Storage table. That'll either come right next
There,
to the
you would
function.
just lazy write, and then lazy write
Yeah.
over to the other one.
Yeah, you async write it, and it doesn't take that long.
Yeah.
So I think you get it to the storage table right away. You trigger the second Azure function
Yeah.
off the table row, and then you're good. Everything will be immediate.
Okay, that's more good stuff. If you look at my function, I did write to the blob store. If I hadn't done that, it still would have went there, because that's the wired output place to go, okay? So probably what he's saying is true, that if you just write it yourself, you get a better performance.
And also the table, not blob, it's a different thing. There's three different
Yeah,
things.
now-
Azure storage tables and blob, and there's just different items.
Yeah. Now, the durable functions, you don't create that intermediate storage, and they are supposed to be tuned to give better performance, but you don't learn anything that way. And when it goes wrong, you're staring at something that you just can't. How do I get my arms around this? But probably once you know this kind of thing, you would do that kind of thing.
You ever taken the Storage Explorer, throwing up a whole bunch of files, say 100 files, and then going and try to rename a couple of them? You ever seen that?
Mm-hmm.
I gave that a shot one time, waiting how that all works.
Okay, so I guess we're done for the evening. We got more closer to where I wanted to get than I thought we would get. So, and the slides are going to go to the triumvirate here. They've assured me they will respect, wish, and grant it, and so it'll all go up there. It has contact information, so if you have a question, go ahead and contact me. By phone, I might be in the middle of something. By email, I'll get to it. I don't do so much of Twitter. I'm trying to become less than a Luddite, but I have an account.
Getting at 2 in the morning is not too early in the morning.
Yeah, Jim knows not to meet in the morning too early on a weekend. You need the laptop?
Yes.
There you go.
A few more slides.
Yeah, you can just close that out.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Well, thank you. Hopefully, the sins that I told you about, I spent at least a week figuring a lot of that out and getting my head around it. So it saves you guys a day or so. It's probably an hour here, right?
Not cool.
I'm so glad I came back from Syracuse because they're getting like a foot and a half of snow as I was leaving.
Is that where you were earlier?
Yeah.
Does it work out there? Or?
Yeah, we don't have a foot and a half yet.
We're only we got like 7 to 9. That's like a cocktail hour or something, right?
It's supposed to rain, wash it all away, right?
Yeah.
45 by tomorrow?
Yeah.
Counting
And it's only supposed to be 2 inches tonight. Yeah. All right, so we have some upcoming community events. We have Turbononic, developing complex Azure phones.
I'm going to go to
So,
that.
yeah. So if you guys got a kick out of this one and you want to take it up to the next level, feel free to head over there. They have a meetup page, and that's linked right here.
It's pretty good one.
Do you know where that is, Jim?
No, it's
Is it an online
it's
thing?
close. It's closer than this to get to. I forget, but it's like
Closer.
it's like down near St. James Street, near that place we went to, Jim.
Okay.
It's less key stops than this.
Okay. Then we have hosting internal PowerShell repositories with file shares and NuGet feeds. Okay. Also a meetup thing. And we have an app in a day workshop, Power Apps and Flow, on November 29th, hosted by Mr. David Losey, or contact David Losey. I don't know if he's hosting it. Go to David's house and yeah. They can play with the kids. And then there's the Office Workshop and Expo. That's on December 4th. And that's going to be at Microsoft Burlington, right?
Yeah.
For that event. And that's going to be hosted by, or run by a friend of the user group, Chris Bortlick, who is an excellent presenter. He's presented for us numerous times, and he is this user group's official Microsoft sponsor. And then we have Taking User Profiles to New Heights on December 6th. That's going to be for the, that's Granite State Spug. So that's going to be up at the Rockingham Mall, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's in the Microsoft store usually.
Yeah.
In the back, so it's a little noisy, but.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I went to their October one. It was really interesting. They actually had a remote speaker there. Our speaker phoned in from Canada. It was really good. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lot of users doing that now.
Yeah.
When I say that, what
Okay. Are we missing anything? Anybody else have any ideas? Any other sessions coming up? Yeah.
So what I didn't show you is that there is a Azure function for publishing, and if there's a little Azure button on the left-hand side of VS Code, and it'll let you publish as well. So you can do your thing and publish it up there. And then while it's up there, if you go to the function app, you'll see where it'll let you download. When you click download, it's going to ask you, do you want a Visual Studio thing or not, or do you just want this? And a little checkbox for the, do you want to get the content as well? And you want to click that, and it will bring the whole thing back down here in the zip file, and inside will be the local.json that produced that stuff that allowed me to talk up there. So,
Awesome.
And one more thing, it's not part of this, but once you get it up there and you look around, you'll see something called slots. You're maybe like me wonder, what the heck are slots, right? So you're going to want to do dev, QA, and production probably. So the slots allow you to configure those things, as many as you want, and then you can configure different storage accounts. So while you're doing dev, you use one set of storage accounts, and QA uses theirs, and nobody uses prod, but something that's ready for prod. So, so those are the things I've figured out that might help you guys.
Okay.
I'm done.
Fair enough. Here's a listing of other regularly meeting user groups, including the Boston Azure group. So if you guys want more cool info like this, there is a meetup dedicated just to Azure in the local Boston area. We also have a lot of sharing groups, the New England Link user group. That's actually the New England Skype for Business user group now, but they haven't changed. Meetup makes it very difficult to change the URLs, but yeah. So yeah, there's also a Hartford Office 365 and a dedicated PowerShell user group here in Boston. So, why is this blinking so much? Also, real quick announcement, speaking to, as Jim had mentioned, we're going to make available for you guys his presentations. We have actually just launched our brand new website. So the Boston Office 365 user group.com is now up and running again. For the past several months, it was actually just redirecting people to our Eventbrite landing page. It is now its own website. There's lots of great new features there. You guys can actually go back and take a look through almost every presentation we've ever done, and a lot of decks are now published right in there. You can cross sort these sessions by speaker or by sponsor of the events. So really easy way to lots of good information. You can also register for our upcoming events, and all of our upcoming events are going to be posted very prominently right on the main page there. So should be a lot easier for everybody to find out what we're doing.
Yeah.
All right. So good stuff. So our next event is going to be the Holiday Experts Panel. So this is something we do in our December session every year. It's going to be on December 20th. So again, third Thursday. And that's going to be at Microsoft MTC. That's the Burlington location over at 5 Wayside Road, I think it is. So great facility. That's actually one of our regular venues. So we hope to see you guys there, especially you new guys. Come see us out in Burlington if you can. We always have a really good time there. And maybe keep an eye out. Feel free to tweet to us leading up to that, some topics that you guys would maybe like discussed or to do a deep dive on. And that way we'll have a whole bunch of topics in case there's any lulls in our questions that come up. All right.
Priming the pump.
Priming the pump, that's right. All right, so one more thing. Any problems or tips? We like harnessing the community here. We got a lot of people with a lot of different experiences here. Anybody having any issues with anything related to Office 365? No? Everything's working perfectly well?
Forms, Microsoft Forms.
Yeah, anybody using Forms?
You just set it for everyone. I just found, I got 2 little hacks.
Yeah.
How to kind of make it more user-friendly. Kind of adding pseudo-paging to your form. And then reformatting the questions a little bit so they're more visually appealing to the users. They're hacks because they're hacks.
Let me user do it, so I don't know.
Yeah, they're easy enough. It's
Okay,
like 2 clicks and you can make it work. It's just a matter of knowing how to make it work.
Yeah, they're no code hacks.
Highly recommend taking a look at it. It helps the forms experience tremendously.
Yeah.
They're small, but they matter.
I actually read that blog post earlier today. It was awesome.
Yeah, cool.
Good stuff. Thank you for that. Anything else? Trying to think what fun things I ran into in the past month. There was a lot. All right. Any pro tips? Anybody looking for employees, or anybody looking to find a new place to call home?
Contract work, or people with contractors.
Okay. What kind of skill?
35 years as a developer, maybe 15 years Microsoft developer.
Okay.
Lately,
Cool.
Azure, keeping Azure table storage, websites. Honestly, web forms, I know what MVC is, haven't gotten as deep in, but SQL optimization,
Okay.
client references, all kinds of stuff.
All right. Awesome. We'll keep that in mind.
Lauren from Untitled Frank called me today, and she got 2
I know Lauren.
bills she's trying to fill. One is for somebody to do taxonomy,
Ooh.
and the other one is, I think it becomes a second engagement to tell the company what to do with it once you figure out the taxonomy. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're looking, you might want to call Lauren at Nigel Frank.
Okay. Very, very good. All right. It's the long awaited for raffle time.